This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
There is a sound you never forget. It's not the sound of a monitor. It's not the sound of doctors moving quickly through the hallway. It's not the sound of a phone ringing at 2 a.m. It's not even the sound of a newborn crying. It's the silence. The silence that comes after someone says, "We're not sure she's going to make it." That silence is unlike anything else in the world. It doesn't just fall over a room. It swallows it. It swallows the lights and the sounds and the air. It turns the floor into something unstable beneath your feet. It makes time feel like it's moving wrong, too slow, then too fast, then not at all. The silence is heavy in a way nothing else is. It sits on your chest. It steals the oxygen from the room. It wraps around your throat and squeezes. And the strange thing about that kind of silence, you still have to breathe through it. You still have to stand there. You still have to look at the person standing next to you and somehow hold each other up. In July of 2017, we met that silence. It came for us in the middle of a Springfield, Missouri hospital, in a building full of machines and people trained to stay calm, while everything inside of us was screaming. And it almost broke us. Almost. But here's the thing about almost. Almost means it didn't. Almost means you're still here. Almost means there's still a story to tell. And almost means that somewhere on the other side of that silence, on the other side of that year, there was something worth surviving for. Welcome to We Are the Hansons. I'm so glad you're here today, because today's episode is one we've thought about doing for a long time. We've talked about it. We've started it and put it down. We've asked ourselves whether the time was right. And the truth is, there's never a perfect moment to crack yourself open. But there is a right reason. And the right reason is this. Somebody listening right now is in a hospital room. Somebody is waiting for a phone call. Somebody is stretched so thin they can barely breathe, carrying weight that feels like too much for one person, or even two. This episode is for that person, because we have been in that hospital room. We have waited for that phone call. We have carried that weight, and we made it through. Today, we're sharing the story of Anailyn, our daughter, our miracle, our testimony. July of 2017 was the hardest year of our lives as parents. And by the time you finish listening today, I hope you understand not just what happened, but what it taught us about faith, about family, about what human beings are actually capable of when the worst comes for them. This is her story, and it's ours. To understand what happened, you have to understand where we were. We had a full life. We had a growing family. We had the kind of summer rhythm that big families fall into. Kids moving in and out of the house, noise and laughter as background music, work humming along, plans being made and adjusted and made again. That summer felt normal. Not perfect, it never is, but normal, alive, moving. And in a big family, Movement is everything. You don't stop often. You don't slow down to stare at the ceiling asking yourself if things are okay. You just go. You trust that momentum. You trust the rhythm. We trusted it. Then the rhythm broke. My water broke. Too early. Now, there is something about the human body that knows the difference between the expected and the wrong. Even before you've had a moment to process what's happening, something in you recognizes the wrongness of it, like a bell being struck off key. You feel it before you understand it. This felt wrong. We moved fast. There's no other way to describe it. The next several hours became pure motion. Rushing to the ER, bright lights and the smell of antiseptic and voices asking quick, calm, professional questions. Nurses moving with the particular kind of urgency that doesn't look like panic from the outside, but absolutely communicates that something serious is happening. Broken water, premature, high risk. They stabilized me as well as they could. And then came the next piece of news. I needed to be transferred immediately to Cox South Hospital in Springfield, Missouri, where they had the resources to handle what was coming. And just like that, our life condensed. All the things we had going, all the plans, all the movement and noise and rhythm of a big family, all of it narrowed down to one single thing. Keep this baby alive. They admitted me. And then we waited 16 days. Now, I want you to sit with that for a moment, because when people hear 16 days, it sounds like a number. It sounds manageable. People have come back from longer hospital stays than that and walked out smiling. But these weren't 16 days of recovery. These were 16 days of suspension. 16 days of lying in bed and trying to hold on to pregnancy that was working against itself. 16 days of monitoring, telling you things in data that you had asked a nurse to translate. 16 days of trying to read the expressions on doctors' faces before they even started talking. Every single morning began the same way. You open your eyes, and for about 2 seconds, you don't remember where you are. For 2 seconds, it's just light and sound and the strange ceiling of a room that isn't yours. And then it lands, all of it, right back on your chest. And you take a breath and you decide, again, to keep going. You decide every morning that what people don't tell you about hard seasons, you don't make one courageous decision and then coast on it. You make the decision over and over, every day, sometimes every hour. You choose to keep going. You choose to believe. You choose to not collapse, even when collapsing feels like it would be a relief. Nights in a hospital room are their own thing. There is no real darkness in a hospital. There's always a glow, from monitors, from the hallway, from somewhere. And there's always sound, distant footsteps, beeps from somewhere down the hall, the soft mechanical breath of equipment doing its job, the occasional PA system, the muffled conversations of nurses in their station. You don't really sleep. You hover. You think about your kids at home. You wonder if they're scared. You wonder if the right people are keeping the right routines. You think about things you forgot to arrange, small logistical failures that feel enormous at 2 a.m, and there's nothing else to occupy your brain. You count days forward and backward, trying to calculate something you have absolutely no control over. We have other children who needed us, and the weight of being in 2 places at once, of knowing that your family is divided and that every day you spend in this room is a day someone else is holding things together at home. That weight has its own texture. It doesn't cancel out the fear for the baby. It layers on top of it. How are the kids doing? Is school okay? Does everyone know we love them even though we're not there? Those questions run underneath everything else like a current. And underneath it all, fear. Not that loud kind. Not the panic kind, the quiet kind, the kind that just sits in the back of your chest and stays there, patient, waiting, the kind that sharpens when the doctors come in and softens lightly when they leave with no bad news. Just softens, never fully releases. We prayed. We talked. We held each other up the way people do when there is nothing else to hold on to. And there's something about shared fear, about being in the same impossible situation with the person you've chosen to build your life with, that either breaks people apart or welds them together. It welded us. Not without difficulty, not without moments where we had nothing left to give each other, but it welded us. And then on the 16th day, the doctors came in. Emergency C-section, no more waiting. Whatever is going to happen next was happening now. Anailyn was born on July 31st, 2017. 3 pounds, 6 ounces. I don't know if you've ever held someone that small. A bag of sugar weighs more. A newborn kitten weighs more. The weight of a premature baby in your hands doesn't feel like a human weight. It feels like holding a bird. Like holding something so fragile that your own pulse seems like a threat. When they held her up, and I can see this moment like it's still happening right now, she looked impossibly small, more like a memory than a baby, more like something you dreamed than something real. She couldn't breathe on her own. They intubated her immediately. Machines became her lungs. Machines became her strength. Machines became the invisible hands that held her while ours couldn't reach. And within the first few days, the reports started coming in. She had contracted a severe blood infection, Enterobacter, a bacterial infection that can be devastating in a body that small. A body with almost no reserves, no margins, no room for error. Spinal meningitis, a grade 4 brain bleed, and fluid building on her brain. Her ventricles were plugged. Drainage wasn't happening the way it needed to. Pressure was building. The doctors told us she would likely need a shunt placed in her brain to relieve it. Each piece of news landed like its own weight. You absorb one thing and then another comes. You find your footing, and then the ground shifts again. And then, in the middle of it all, a doctor looked at us and said the thing no parent is ever ready to hear. We're not sure she'll make it. That was the moment. That was the silence. The one I described at the beginning of this episode. The one that swallows the room. The silence didn't last forever. Doctors kept moving. Nurses kept doing their jobs. Time kept going. But inside us, time stopped. And everything that came next, every single day for the next 3 months, came from the other side of that moment. The first month of Anailyn's life was touch and go. If you've ever heard the phrase used in a real context, not as a figure of speech, not as a way of describing a difficult meeting or a complicated project, if you've ever had a doctor look at you and mean it literally, let me tell you what it actually feels like. Every morning, you wake up bracing for the call. Every time a nurse approaches with a specific expression, your heart moves into your throat. Every number on a monitor becomes something you study like you're learning a language. You exist in a permanent state of not knowing. And not knowing is exhausting in a way that sleep can't fix. Because even when you manage to sleep, even when your body finally surrenders to it, your brain doesn't fully power down. It stays on low alert, ready to wake, ready to receive whatever comes next. There is a particular kind of grief that lives inside waiting. Not grief for something that has happened, grief for something that might. Pre-grief, the morning of a future you are terrified of before it has arrived, and you can't talk yourself out of it because it isn't irrational. The fear is based on real information, real numbers, real words spoken by real doctors in real rooms. You are not catastrophizing. You are listening. And that distinction is important. And you're not distinction. And that distinction is important because a lot of well-meaning people in your life will try to tell you you're being too negative, that you need to stay positive, that fear and faith can't coexist. I want to gently push back on that. Fear and faith absolutely coexist. Faith doesn't mean you aren't scared. Faith means you are scared and you still believe. It means you are looking directly at the worst possible outcome and you are still choosing, actively, deliberately, with every ounce of you, every ounce of will you have left, to believe that God is not done with this story. That's what faith is. And that's what we were doing in those first weeks. We prayed constantly, not polished prayers, not the kind you rehearse or the kind that sounds good out loud, not the kind that demonstrates your faith for anyone else to see. Desperate prayers, the kind that come out broken, the kind where you don't finish sentences, the kind where you bargain, the kind where you cry so hard you can't breathe, and somewhere in the middle of it, you're still talking to God because you don't know what else to do. Lord, please, just let her live. Please let her breathe. Please let her make it through this tonight. Please don't ask me to go home without her. Those prayers, and she was so tiny. Her fingers, if you could call them that, they were more like suggestions of fingers, would sometimes curl around the very tip of one of ours. Just the tip. That's all they were wide enough for. And in that moment, that small curl, that tiny grip, it felt like communication. Like she was saying, I know you're here. I'm still here too. Her chest rising and falling with the help of machines. Her skin so thin you could see the effort in it, the work, the fight. And there was something about watching a 3-pound baby fight that reset everything I thought I knew about strength. Because that baby was stronger than I have ever been in my life. Stronger than I had the language to describe. She had no idea what was happening. She had no philosophy about it. No theology. No coping strategies. She just kept breathing. She just kept fighting, with no frame of reference and no choice in the matter. Her little body woke up every morning and did it again. And somehow, watching her, we found enough to keep going too. We lived in the NICU for 86 days. 86 days of scrubbing in before touching our own daughter. 86 days of gowns and gloves and protocols. 86 days of memorizing the meaning of every sound those machines could make. 86 days of watching strangers take better physical care of our child than we were allowed to. That's a particular kind of helplessness. It doesn't make you angry at the nurses. You love those nurses. You need those nurses. Those nurses become some of the most important people in your life. But you are her parents. And you can't just pick her up. You can't just hold her whenever you want. Every interaction has a procedure. Every touch has a purpose. You are grateful. You are terrified. You are grateful again. And meanwhile, life doesn't pause. We had other children at home. Let that settle for a second. Because this is part of the story that I think a lot of parents in our situation carry quietly. When one of your children is in crisis, the rest of your children still need you. They still need dinner. They still need someone at pickup. They still need a parent who is present and steady and not visibly falling apart. Our life didn't pause. It split. Part of us was in the NICU, watching monitors, talking to nurses, willing that baby to keep fighting. Part of us was home, trying to keep things as normal as possible for kids who were scared and confused and needed their parents to tell them it was going to be okay. And we had to say it like we believed it, even when we weren't sure. Gas wasn't cheap. Back and forth between home and the hospital, hour after hour, day after day, week after week. You don't think about logistics when your baby is in the NICU. You just go. You just get in the car and go. But the cost builds quietly in the background while your attention is somewhere else. Work slowed, income dropped, bills didn't. Exhaustion built in layers, the kind of tired that lives in your bones. We were stretched in every direction that a human being can be stretched. And then something happened that I need to tell you about, because this part of the story matters just as much as the medical part. A nurse sat down with me, not to deliver test results, not to explain a procedure, just sat down, and she told me about Children's Miracle Network. I'll be honest, I didn't even fully understand what I needed until she said those words. When you're in the middle of something like this, you develop a kind of tunnel vision. You focus on the immediate. You don't think about the resources or programs or asking for help. You just survive the day. But she said, they help families like yours. And something in me cracked open when she said that. I reached out and they stepped in. Gas vouchers so we could make the drive back and forth without calculating whether we could afford it. Financial support that meant we could be present for our daughter without feeling like we were drowning on top of everything else. Children's Miracle Network was a lifeline, not a metaphor, a literal lifeline. Without them, I genuinely do not know how we would have managed to be in two places at once for 86 days. And our family showed up too. They came without being asked. They cooked food and dropped in. They picked up kids from school. They stayed nights when we couldn't. They did the invisible labor of keeping a household alive while the center of gravity had shifted to the hospital room across town. In our weakest moments, the moment when I think both of us wondered if we had enough left to keep going, we were not alone. We were carried, and I will never stop being grateful for that. Here is what I've learned about miracles. They rarely arrive the way you expect. You pictured the dramatic moment, the doctor walking in with a smile, the single test result that changes everything, the clear and unmistakable turning of a corner that you can identify by a single date and time. What actually happened was slower than that, more fragile, more tentative. Anailyn began to stabilize, not in a single moment, not in a way that felt like triumph, in increments, in small improvements that a nurse would point out, and we would receive like gifts we hadn't been sure we deserved. An infection, marker moving in the right direction, a reading that looked better than yesterday, a response, tiny, almost imperceptible, that told the doctors her body was beginning to do something right. And here's the thing about good news when you have been living in bad news. You don't know how to receive it at first. You've trained yourself to brace. You've conditioned your nervous system to expect the setback, the complication, the next piece of news that recognizes everything. So when the good comes in, there's a delay, a beat of hesitation. You look at the nurses' faces twice to make sure you're reading it correctly. You ask a question even when you've heard the answer, because you have to be certain before you let yourself feel it. And then slowly, you let yourself feel it. The Enterobacter infection began to clear. The bleeding in her brain stopped progressing. The shunt was placed to relieve the pressure that had been building on her brain. A surgery on a body that small is its own miracle of precision and skill, and it worked. Slowly, carefully, one breath at a time, she began to fight her way forward. After 86 days in the NICU, 86 days of monitors and prayers and scrubbing in and driving back and forth and holding each other up in the parking lot, we brought her home. Fragile, monitored, still fragile in ways that would require ongoing care and attention for years to come, but alive. I am telling you, the moment we walked out of that hospital with her, the sunlight felt different. The air felt different. I don't know how else to explain it. Everything that you have taken for granted, every ordinary thing about an ordinary day becomes something else entirely when you have just spent 3 months wondering if you'd ever have an ordinary day again. We cried in the parking lot. Of course we did. We weren't finished. We knew that. There was still so much ahead of us. Doctors and follow-ups and therapies and questions without clear answers. We knew that. But we had made it through the worst, or at least we thought we had. Those 4 years were remarkable. Anailyn grew. She developed. She hit milestones that had been uncertain. Milestones that doctors had listed in cautious language during those early months. Language that left the future deliberately vague so as not to overpromise what a premature brain, a brain that had bled, a brain that had been under pressure, might or might not be able to do. She did them anyway, one by one. We celebrated things that other parents check off a list without ceremony. For us, each one felt like winning a championship, like punching through a wall that had been standing in our way since the day she was born. Her first real steps, her first words, her first laugh, the kind that starts deep and climbs. We didn't take any of it for granted. We couldn't. We had sat in that hospital room. We had heard those words. We knew what the alternative looked like. So we celebrated everything. We were the family that cried happy tears at the things other people took for granted. And we were not embarrassed about that for even a second. But then, when Anailyn was 4 years old, new hurdles came. Seizures. The first time it happened, I want you to understand what that experience is like as a parent. Because it is one of the worst, frightening things a human can witness. When a child seizes, time doesn't just slow down. It fragments. Your brain stops being able to process things. There's just the moment, and the moment, and the moment. Each one arriving before you've finished absorbing the last. Your child is there. Something is happening to her body that she has no control over, and you can't stop it. That's the specific torture of it. You can't stop it. You can only be present for it. And when it was over, when the moment passed and we were in the car on the way to get help, I remember the strange silence that filled the space. Not the silence from one hospital room in 2017, a different kind. The silence of a parent recollaborating, of a person thinking, we thought we were through this. We thought we had passed the worst. And now, here we are again, starting another chapter we didn't ask for. You think you've already walked through the fire. You think, after everything, that you have paid some kind of debt, that you have endured enough, that the universe has extracted its toll, and now you are owed some peace. And then you're reminded, gently but firmly, that it doesn't work that way. Prematurity doesn't disappear when you walk out of a NICU. It doesn't vanish because you want it to, or because you've been grateful enough, or because you've told the story enough times that it should be finished. The effects of what her body went through in those earliest days, the infections, the grade 4 brain bleed, the pressure on her ventricles, the surgery, those things write themselves into the story of a body. And sometimes, years later, that story presents another chapter you weren't ready for. We entered another season. Neurologist, EEG testing, adjustments, the particular paperwork burden of managing a pediatric neurological condition, the prior authorizations, the pharmacy calls, the school accommodations, the conversations with teachers about what to watch for and what to do. Another season of fear. Another season of appointments and not knowing and collaborating your own emotional response every single day so that your child doesn't feel the weight of her own medical history landing on her young shoulders. Because that is something parents in these situations carry that isn't talked about enough. You are managing your own fear while simultaneously protecting your child from feeling like a problem. You are terrified and you are tender at the same time. You are watching her carefully and you are refusing to let your careful watching become something she notices and internalizes. You want her to feel normal. You want her to feel safe. You want her to feel like a kid. And so you manage your fear quietly, in the margins, in the car on the way home, and in the brief minutes before sleep when your guard comes down. But here is what was different this time. We weren't the same people we had been in 2017. That year had changed us, not broken us, changed us at the level of character, forged something in us that wasn't there before, something that could only be made under the particular kind of heat. We had already seen her survive the impossible. We had already watched her beat odds that doctors had named out loud. We had already learned, at a cellular level, what this family is made of. And so when the seizures came, we were scared. Of course we were scared. Any parent would be. But we were not destroyed. We got up, we made the calls, We went to the appointments, we adjusted, we kept going, and we believed. Again, as we had believed in that NICU, in that parking lot, in the car on the way to and from the hospital for 86 days, we believed she would do it again. She would beat it again. I want to tell you who Anailyn is today, because that's the point of all of this. That's where this story has been going from the very first sentence. Today, Anailyn is growing. She is thriving. She laughs loud, the kind of laugh that has no filter, no restraint, the kind of laugh that makes other people laugh just because of how free it is. She runs. She plays. She argues with her siblings. She has opinions about things. She has preferences and favorite foods and games she wants to win. She is full of life in the most complete sense of that phrase. The same little girl who doctors once weren't sure would survive became the Children's Miracle Network ambassador at 4 years old. Think about that. The baby who needed the organization's support came back years later as its face, as its living, breathing argument for why the work matters. 3 pounds, 6 ounces. She now stands tall as a testimony. We still have hurdles. I want to be honest with you about that because I think there's a version of this story that wraps everything in a bow and suggests that the hard part is over and now everything is easy. That's not true. We still have appointments. We still have moments that stretch our faith and ask things of us that we didn't budget for. There are still days, but we are not standing in silence anymore. We are standing in strength. And there is a difference between those two things that no one who hasn't lived them can fully explain. Let me tell you, I've been asked more than once what July of 2017 taught us. People who know pieces of the story want to know what you take from something like that, what you carry forward, what the hardest year of your life leaves behind when it finally releases its grip. Let me tell you, faith isn't passive. I think a lot of people, and I include our former selves in this, treat faith like a waiting posture, like something you hold while something else happens, like a spiritual blanket you pull around yourself while you wait for God to act. We talk about having faith the way we talk about having patience, like it's a still thing, a quiet thing, a thing you hold in your hands without moving. What that year taught us is that faith is active. It moves. It puts one foot in front of the other in the dark. It shows up to the hospital every single day, even when the news is the same. It drives across town on a gas voucher, and it scrubs its hands and touches a 3-pound baby through the portal of an incubator and whispers, "We're here. We're still here. We're not leaving." Faith is what got us out of our bed on day 37 of the NICU, when every cell of our bodies wanted to collapse. Faith is what kept us during the long nights. Faith is what made us capable of hope when hope seemed like the most expensive thing in the world. Faith is action taken in the absence of certainty. That's what it is. That's what it has to be. Family isn't optional. I know it sounds simple. I know everyone says it. But there is something about standing in the middle of a crisis that recognizes your understanding of what the word actually means. In ordinary life, family is a category. People you love, people you call on birthdays, people who share your history. In a crisis, family becomes a verb. Family is the people who show up before you ask, who don't wait for you to identify the need and communicate it and confirm that yes, help would be appreciated. They just show up and do the thing. Family is the food on the porch. Family is the person who picks up your kids without making it a conversation. Family is the text that says, "Don't worry about anything, we have it," and means it. Family is the person sitting next to you in the hospital parking lot at midnight who doesn't say a word because there aren't words, but they stay anyways. Family is the thing that holds when everything else is shaking. And I want to be clear. Family in this context is not just biology. Family is whoever shows up It is neighbors and church members and people from your community who had no obligation to help and helped anyway. Family is bigger than blood. It is the circle of people who choose, in a moment of crisis, to include themselves in the cost. We had that, and it saved us. Community matters. We live in a world that celebrates self-sufficiency. We celebrate the person who handles everything alone, who doesn't need help, who figures it out without inconveniencing anyone. We treat independence like a virtue and asking for help like a character flaw. We would rather quietly suffer than admit that we have reached our limit. I am here to tell you that is a lie we have collectively agreed to believe, and it causes extraordinary harm. Asking for help is how you survive. Full stop. Asking for help is what made it possible for us to be present for our daughter every single day of those 86 days. Without Children's Miracle Network, without those gas vouchers, we would have had to make impossible choices. Stay with Anailyn or go home with our other children. Be present for that baby who needed us, or be present for the kids who needed us. That is not a choice any parent should have to make. And we didn't have to make it because we asked for help, because a nurse sat down and told us help was available. Asking for help is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the decision to prioritize the outcome over the ego. It is the recognition that you were not built to carry everything alone, and that the people around you, in your community, in your family, in organizations you didn't even know existed, may be ready and willing to help if you just let them. We asked for help. We received it, and our daughter is alive. Let that be the testimony. Asking for help is the right thing to do. And one more thing, one that I think is the most important thing I can leave you with. Miracles don't always look dramatic. We want them to. We want the parting of the sea and the voice from the sky and the unmistakable, undeniable sign that something divine has intervened. We want to be certain. But miracles are quieter than that. More patient, more ordinary in their packaging. A 3-pound baby taking one more breath. That is a miracle. A gas voucher that gets a mother to the NICU for the 38th time. That is a miracle. A nurse who decides at the end of a long shift to sit down next to a mother she barely knows and says, "Hey, there is help available. Let me tell you about it." That is a miracle. A grade 4 brain bleed that stops progressing. A shunt that works. An infection that clears. A body that had every reason to give up and didn't. All miracles. And a 4-year-old overcoming her first seizure. And then the next one. And then the next one. Until the seizures become manageable and then infrequent. And then the part of history rather than an ongoing crisis. That too. All of it. And the most miraculous thing of all might be this. A little girl who doctors once stood over with uncertain faces, who came into this world at 3 pounds 6 ounces, surrounded by machines, who spent her first 86 days under fluorescent lights while her parents drove back and forth and scrubbed their hands and prayed desperate prayers in the dark. That same little girl who sits across the table at breakfast arguing about what she's going to have for lunch. Loud, opinionated, alive. That is the miracle. The ordinary, beautiful, loud, laughing, impossible, ordinary morning. I will never stop being grateful for it. If you are walking through something right now, if you are sitting in a hospital room at this exact moment, listening to this with headphones in, trying to hold yourself together while the world outside keeps moving like nothing is happening, while people walk by in normal clothes, while normal concerns obvious to the fact that your whole world has narrowed to a room and a bed and a machine making sounds you've memorized. Hear this. If you are waiting for test results or a phone call or a piece of news that will either crack everything open or give you the first real breath you've had in weeks, if you are stretched far beyond what you thought was your limit, that you've lost sight of where your limit was. If you're sitting in a parking lot right now because you need 5 minutes away from the waiting room, and you put on this podcast just to hear another human voice that wasn't delivering information or instructions, hear this. You are stronger than you think you are. I don't say this as a slogan. I don't say that as a kind of encouragement that sounds good but lands hollow. I don't say it because it's the right thing to say at the end of this episode like this. I say it as a person who sat in that silence, who heard those words, who lived inside a particular kind of fear for nearly 3 months and came out on the other side, who drove back and forth and borrowed gas money and scrubbed their hands and touched a 3-pound baby through glass and came back and did it again the next day. You are stronger than you know, because strength doesn't announce itself before you need it. It doesn't give you a preview. It shows up when there's no alternative, when there is nothing left to do but be strong. You discover that you have been holding reserves you didn't know were there. That's where strength actually lives. Not in the easy days, not in the moments when everything is working, not in the times when you feel capable and rested and ready, in the moments when nothing is working and you get up anyway, when the last thing you want to do is face another day of it, and you face it anyway, when you have nothing left to give and you find something to give anyway. God is closer than you feel. In those desperate, broken prayers at 2 a.m, God was in those prayers. In the nurse who sat down and told us about help we didn't know to ask for, God was in that conversation. In the family members who showed up without being asked, God was in that showing up. Faith is being able to see those moments for what they are, even when you're exhausted, even when your eyes are too tired from crying to see clearly. Even then. And this moment, as dark as it is, as heavy as it is, it's not the end of your story. It is a chapter. One of the hard ones. One of the ones that changes the shape of you. One of the ones that you will, one day, share with someone else who is sitting in their own hard chapter, because you will know exactly what they need to hear. But it is not the last one. July of 2017 was our hardest year as parents. But it was also the year we learned what we're actually made of. It was the year that faith stopped being a concept and became a practice. It was the year we found out what our family is capable of when everything is on the line. It was the year a 3-pound, 6-ounce girl came into this world fighting and refused to stop. And because of that year, because all of it, we are who we are now. We are faith. We are family. We are resilience. We are gratitude. We are the people who know what 86 days in a NICU looks like. We are the people who know what a gas voucher means when you're running on empty. We are the people who have heard the silence and kept breathing anyway. We are the Hansons. No matter what the next chapter holds, no matter what we're asked to carry, no matter what silence we're asked to stand in, we will make it through. Always.